Hello and welcome to Banff Centre Talks. I'm Dominic Girard, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Canadian dance choreographer Crystal Pite. A couple words for you: dark, brilliant, challenging, innovative, uplifting. Just a few descriptors of the that have been applied to Crystal's body of work. Crystal Pite has become one of this country's most celebrated artists, working around the globe and garnering critical raves wherever she goes. Hope you're okay with that. Yeah. Crystal presented her first professional choreography 25 years ago in 1990 when she was with Ballet British Columbia. In 96, she left Canada and headed to Germany, and that's where she worked with and learned from the radical genius of the great American dancer and choreographer William Forsythe. Then in 2001, Crystal returned to Vancouver and launched Kid Pivot, her own interdisciplinary performing arts company, shortly after that. Crystal's return to the Banff Centre, this time putting finishing touches on her latest creation, the much-anticipated Betroffenheit. It's set to premiere at the PanAm Games in Toronto on July 23rd, 2015. Crystal has long held an interest in the theatricality of staging a performance and telling stories through movement. Betroffenheit may mark her most literal attempt to tell a story yet. We'll get into that in a second, see if she agrees with me. The production is a collaboration with Electric Company Theatre, co-artistic director Jonathon Young, who's both a writer and a performer in the piece. Now that word, Betroffenheit, it doesn't have a direct English equivalent, but it refers more or less to a state of shock so all-encompassing that it defies description. But nonetheless, today we will try our best to define and describe some aspects of what to expect from this unique artist. So please join me in welcoming back to the Banff Centre, Ms. Crystal Pite.
Thank you.
So Crystal, you have a fascination with telling stories and working with narrative. So what compels you to want to tell a story in the work that you do?
I think I'm interested in humans, and I'm interested in emotion, and I'm interested in connecting to other humans through the work that I do. And I feel that that we need story to connect to each other. It's through story that we connect. And for me, choreography in and of itself isn't as interesting if I don't imbue it with some kind of a content or story or meaning. I've tried working just purely abstractly with dance, just pure expression of music or just composition and configurations of bodies and space. And I feel like those have been my biggest failures as an artist, is when I've worked in that kind of a realm. So I certainly appreciate people that do work that way, but for me personally, I don't feel like I connect to what I need to connect to when I'm creating.
It's unsatisfying.
Yeah, it feels a little bit hollowed out. And so if I feel like I'm connecting to some kind of a story or a particular content, then I feel inspired and I feel challenged, and I feel like then I have the energy and the engine that I need to be able to create something.
You've also said, though, at the same time, that dance is an inefficient way to tell a story.
Yeah, it is. It's a really inefficient way to tell a story, and especially if you're trying to tell a complex story. And so that's why I don't only use dance in my work. I use lots of different tools to try to get things across and to express things. But that said, it is a really efficient tool if you want to evoke a kind of a visceral response in people.
Right.
It can help to override language,
Right.
and override certain kinds of thinking that can help you get to the heart of something very quickly. So it can be a really great tool to get at those kinds of things.
I want to come back to story in a second, but let's dive into a little bit of your story for a second,
Okay.
if you'll indulge. You grew up in BC, and you've often talked about, even as a young girl, you weren't just dancing, you were setting up numbers that you could repeat over and over again, almost like choreography was in your blood or in your DNA or something like that. Do you have any sense of what that satisfied in you, even at that young of an age?
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, as to why so compelled to do that. I mean, even as a toddler, I was choreographing. And of course, I wouldn't have known it was choreography at the time.
Sure.
But when I think back on it now, what I was doing was making up a dance to a specific music, or in this case, it was a song.
What was the song?
Round and Round in My Little Red Wagon. And I
classic.
had classic. I had a choreography that I made to that. And I can still actually remember it. It was very simple. I skipped in a circle this way for 8 counts, and then I skipped in a circle the other way for 8 counts, and then I skipped back the other way for another 8 counts, and so on, which lots of kids do.
Right.
But I had a specific costume that I would wear when I did it, and I was I practiced it a lot, and I would spend a lot of time refining it and performing it. I would invite people to watch it, and so there was so definitely a sense of this sort of this idea of creating something that was that existed, and that could be repeated and refined, which are some of the the things that make choreography what it is.
What was the costume?
I remember it well because I remember my mom wasn't so keen on the pink and the red together. I had a red kilt and a pink T-shirt with a little white lace collar and little buttons. And she was trying to convince me that the pink and the red weren't a good combination. But I remember being very decisive about that.
So you were driven, you had your conviction set, you
The
knew
whole
what you were
aesthetic
going after.
yeah,
Yeah.
very clear. But I also love to improvise, and as I got older and started taking classes and going to more formal lessons and that kind of thing, I would organize my friends to. We'd do. I didn't know what it was called at the time, but an improv jam. I would make a space, and I would play music, and I would do lighting, and I would get my friends to sort of structure structure an improv.
So you were staging the whole thing even then?
Yeah, I was staging the whole thing. I would make tickets and hand them out to family members, and I would rip them, so they came in and put them in the basket. And I had seats. And in our house in Victoria, we had a kind of proscenium. We had a living room and a dining room with kind of an archway in between, and I would string up a sheet between the pillars of that.
As you would.
As you would. And I have this memory, for most of my childhood, we didn't have any dining room furniture. We just had an empty space. And so it was perfect. I could use the dining room area as a place to dance. I had the record player set up over there. I could control the lights. I had two younger brothers that became part of every show that I put on over the years. Did
they want to?
They were really great sports about it, yeah.
Good.
They got involved, yeah. Even when I dressed them up in crazy stuff, they were right in there. Very, very bossy older sister. I think that's part of what's helped me do what I do, is that kind of bossy quality that I have. But yeah, no, I've always done this, and it actually kind of, when I think about how long I've been doing this for, I can't believe I'm not better at it. Just like,
oh, wow.
Like, it's how many hours? Yeah, anyway, so I
okay, so back...
put in the time, let's put it that way.
Back then, when you're in the house and you're running the lights on the record player and the dance and your brothers, you're in full control, full confidence, you know what you're doing, more or less?
Back then, yeah, a lot of confidence. Yeah. Absolutely, that's changed, of course.
And you've also talked about going to Ballet BC right out of high school, and feeling like you had to fake it and wing it at first.
Right.
That must have been almost impossible. It must have been hard to deal with going in. Like, did you know that's the sensation you'd have going into Ballet BC?
Well, I was surprised by the fact that I was there. I was very young when I joined the company. I was 17, and I didn't expect to start my professional dance career so early. Thought I would have another 3 or 4 years of full-on training before I ended up in a company, but it just so happened that I got a job. And so earlier than I maybe was really ready for.
Yeah.
And so, I felt like I really had to fake it and wing it for those first, I'm still feeling like that. I still feel like that. But particularly in those first years as a dancer in the company, having to catch up really fast and always feeling like I was kind of imposter.
The imposter syndrome that artists all feel at some point in their lives, right?
Yeah.
So did it affect your self-confidence? Did it give you all kinds of doubt about what you were up to at that young of an age? Or?
No, I think it just made me, I think it helped me to find the resources to just sort of make it up until I was able to do it for real. Does that make sense? Like I was able to, fake it till I make it sort of expression.
But you did make it. Your first choreography came out of Ballet BC.
It did, and I was lucky because there was my experience as a dancer inside Ballet BC, which was one thing, but I was lucky in that we had the opportunity to choreograph in the company. So there were choreographic workshops organized for the dancers to create things,
Yeah.
which doesn't happen in every company. So I was really fortunate that I was
Right.
dancing in a place where that was important.
How are you working through that though? If you're faking it and winging it,
as a dancer,
but
yeah.
making a choreography as well that you're premiering,
Uh-huh.
how are you working through that kind of, I guess, emotionally, psychologically?
When I think back, I remember myself having a lot of confidence.
Okay.
I didn't have a lot of doubt then.
No.
No, I just was excited and inspired to do stuff and have a chance to create and to explore things. It's been more recently that more and more doubt has crept in, but those early years were just kind of
Gung ho.
Yeah, just free. Yeah,
Do you remember? I mean, are you a nervous performer?
very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that first choreography, do you remember that day? Do you remember?
Well, the choreography is different than the performing.
Okay.
So as a performer, yeah, very nervous. As a choreographer, less so. Yeah,
How come?
and even now, like even in recent years, I certainly had more confidence in my abilities as a choreographer than I ever did in my abilities as a dancer.
How come?
That's for sure. I think I'm a better choreographer than I am a dancer. That's why.
It's pretty
I
simple.
think that's why. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're Ballet BC. From there, you then go to Frankfurt,
Right.
and you work under William Forsythe, who's a legend in contemporary dance. His methods kept you pretty busy,
Yeah.
I would think. And have you internalized the way he works with the way you work now? Has there been a literal absorption of an approach to dance that you got from there?
It's very, very complex what he does. So I wouldn't say that I was able to internalize
Yeah.
much of it. I was able to internalize some of it, and I was able to appreciate all of it. Internalizing is a really interesting word because for me it means that those ideas and those ideals are programmed right into your hard drive, so
Right.
that you can have access to those skills and those
Unconsciously.
awarenesses without even having to think.
Right.
So I'd say, yeah, there's probably some of that is in my system in that way, and other things that I can understand and appreciate, but may not have internalized as a mover. But it was essential and profound, my experience working in Frankfurt and learning from him and from my colleagues in Frankfurt Ballet at the time. It changed the way I thought about creation, changed the way I thought about choreography, about performance, about improvisation. So all of those things have been great discoveries and really, really important to me being able to go forward in my own way as a choreographer.
Changed how? And like raising the value of each of those things? Or?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, raising the value of it. And creating space for those things, especially improv. Thinking about how to use improvisation as a way to generate movement,
Right.
and that was a new idea for me. Had always improvised, but I had never experienced taking improvisation and using it as a generative tool, using it as a way to build choreography, or to think of leaving windows along a piece of choreography for improvisation to live. And so those were great discoveries there. And I think that brought a kind of complexity to what I was doing that wouldn't have been there otherwise.